Welcome to the Seeds of Wisdom series, brought to you by From a Loving Place with author Rachel Wolf. If you like deep, meaningful conversations, this is your place. So settle in and enjoy today's guest. Disclaimer: The Seeds of Wisdom digs into some deep subject matter. In order to plant a seed, we have to dig in the dirt. That's how we grow. If any of the subject matter feels like too much, it is important to seek your own mental health support. I did, and it's why I'm able to be here doing this today. Hello and welcome to episode 22, and I'm so excited for this seed today. It is focusing on relationships to increase happiness with my special guest, Wenzke. I'm so excited to have you here. Her and my book came out within a short period of time from each other. So we kind of connected on social media around those times. And when the bond that came with coronavirus among authors happened, we were just always in each other's atmosphere. And I've felt like I've wanted to talk to you since I first found you on Instagram. I think it was where we first connected, or through Facebook group and then on Instagram. And I kept seeing everything she would put out, and it just made me want to talk even more. So I'm so excited for today. Let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do, because you do so much. So
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for having me. And it is such a pleasure to get to see you sort of in person over Zoom. And we did connect during the pandemic. And I feel like that was such a difficult time for so many people. And you were just such a light. And so thank you for having me today and for connecting over that time. So it really is such a pleasure to be here.
oh, good. I'm so excited. So let's start by having you hold up your book and telling us a little bit about that, and then how you got there.
Yeah, so I'm Wenzke, the author of The Art of Happy Moving: How to Declutter, Pack, and Start Over While Maintaining Your Sanity and Finding Happiness. So it's quite a long title, but I wanted to pack it all in. There's a lot to talk about. And so my husband Dan and I, we moved 10 times in 11 years all around the country. So we moved from Massachusetts to Maryland to Ohio to California to Illinois to Tennessee and back to Illinois, with a few local moves in there as well. And I'm originally from Miami, Florida. So I have really, gone around the country with different moves. And I wanted to talk about the logistics of moving, because I've done a lot of that, decluttering and packing and all of those things. But what really was important to me was more after the move and what happens once you get there, because I had had a difficult experience when I was moving from where were we? The many places. We were in Chicago and we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I had lived all around the country, and I never really gave it much thought of making new friends and how that would come about. And so when I moved there, we didn't know anybody there. We moved with our 3 children, and it was really hard to make new friends. And so that was kind of the start of all of this. My blog, The Art of Happy Moving, my book, The Art of Happy Moving, was really to focus on that part of it. How do you make friends when you move to a new city, and how it impacts us when we are not in strong relationships or having people around us that we need. And so that was really the reason that I wrote my book.
Oh, I love that. And in it, obviously, it segues perfectly into why you have the seed of um, focusing on relationships to increase happiness. So, where did that come from?
Well, I would say it started with my own experience of
Mhm.
feeling that loneliness when I was in Knoxville. And I was a mom, or still am a mom, with 3 kids. And I was with my husband. He was working a lot. We had 3 little kids, and it was just really hard to make new friends when I got there. And I had never experienced that level of loneliness before. And I figured if I was going through it, and I've moved all over, I'm not afraid to go out there and put myself out there and meet new people. But if I was going through it, then I imagined a lot of other people were probably going through the same thing. And so before I had done my blog and my book, I actually started a company called Friend Matchup, which was sort of like Match.com, but for people moving to a new city. And it was really fun and it was great, but I did not have the capital I needed to make it, as big as it needs to be in order to attract people in a certain area. But the response was overwhelming, where people from all over the world were reaching out to me and saying, I just moved to Paris, I just moved to Seattle, and I've been looking for something like this. And so I knew that other people were in this same situation. And when I started writing my blog and my book, I would get a lot of responses like from my blog readers about this. And I study all the positive psychology research and the happiness. And there were two things that constantly came up. One was the focus on personal relationships and how critical that is to our happiness. And the second one being gratitude, that you really need to be grateful for what you have in order to be happy. And so the seed of wisdom was because of my own experience, but also because of all the research that is out there and how important it is to focus on our relationships in order to be happy. And there's a new book that came out that I would love for us to chat about, that is, again, just restating this principle of how important our relationships are.
Oh, that I mean, and it really is. What's the book?
It is called The Good Life by Robert Waldinger and Mark Schultz, and it is based off of a Harvard study that was ongoing that started 85 years ago,
Mhm.
where they had over 700 participants, that were half were Harvard students and then half were boys that lived in the Boston area, and they followed them over their lifetime, where they would interview them every 2 years and see of all kinds of questions of things that were going on in their life and study their happiness over their lifetime. And since then, they've also included family members from those participants and just seeing, okay, well, what makes a good life? And the overwhelming answer was the social relationships. And they call it social fitness, which is a very interesting concept of how do we feed our relationships, how, planting the seed, but more than that, like you need to nurture your relationships and your friendships. And I think this is just so critical.
Well, and you make up, it makes such a good point because it is about friendships, not just a romantic partner too, because one person can't be everything for us. And I've seen that with certain relationships, when they depend on each other too much, it becomes too much pressure,
Yes.
and it's going to explode. Whereas it's always I always notice how much healthier it is when both people have their guy friends, their girlfriends, their, you know what I mean? They have their people to be there for different things. So,
Yes.
so
Uh,
people
for
can be
sure.
there for their strengths.
Yes, that's interesting you bring that up, Rachel, because they have a spreadsheet in their book where it has different columns of what does this person provide to me? Is it stability? Is it the romantic side of it? Is it someone that I laugh with? And so this is not for romantic relationships; it's for
Mhm.
all relationships. And that it is important to see, okay, well, this friend is someone I love to go to the gym with, but might not be the person that I would confide in because of, XYZ or whatever. And so having different people in your life that bring you that joy, that not one person can be everything that you need. And so I love the way that they have the spreadsheets in the book where you can think about, okay, how does this relationship help me? But then on the flip side, it also said, okay, well, how about you write down those same people that are your friends and what do you provide to them? And so I thought that was really cool to think about that of like, yes, what am I giving to these friends and how can I be a better friend? And it is good to see the whole picture. There was another study, I don't remember when it was done, but where just talking about how important small relationships are, where you're just going to the coffee shop and the person you see every day just to say hi, where it doesn't have to be someone that you are talking to, your closest friends, but just those daily interactions and how important they are in our life and our happiness.
Well, and it's such a great point. And I love that, one of the ways I learned this concept was um I was actually in a codependent relationship that was very toxic, and I was in Al-Anon at the time, and my sponsor told me, "Don't go to the hardware store for bread."
Mhm.
And so it just got me thinking, about people's strengths and people's weaknesses, and we can't all be strong at everything. You know, we are going to have different strengths, and so we are going to be able to be better at different things, and celebrating for people for what they're good at. We have friends that make us laugh. That should be encouraged, not expecting them to be there when we're in a heavy emotional time where we're not ready to laugh, you know. But I just loved that concept because it really helped me connect. Don't expect people to be where they're not, you
Yeah,
know, and it takes
absolutely.
that anger out of it. You know,
Mhm.
I don't expect them to be someone they're not by just because I'm in a specific place. And
Yes.
that really helped me. So I definitely think this is all so important because these relationships really do can increase our happiness or our sadness based on our expectations.
Mhm. And I think it's also, I talk a lot about decluttering in my book, but
Mhm,
that's for stuff, right? But I
mhm.
do think it's important with relationships as well, that you only have so much time here. And so that's something to think about. How are we spending our time? Who are we spending our time with? And so as we kind of write down this list of focusing on these people, like what do they bring? Well, if there's someone that you're spending a lot of time with and they're not checking any of those boxes, and like you mentioned, like being in a toxic relationship, then figuring that out and seeing it on paper, seeing things stuff on paper really makes a difference. When you're writing it down, you're like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't see that. And so taking the other side too, just again, our time is limited. So who are we spending our time with? And how are we spending our time? And it's so there's, I wrote down these numbers because I thought this was interesting. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking at my sheet here. So if I live for 50 more years, I have 18,250 days of my life left. And so when you think about who are you spending your time with, and they do talk about this in The Good Life, there are a couple of my friends who live out of state, and I love them. They've been my closest friends for since one of them I've known since we were 4 years old. So if we see each other one weekend a year, which is an effort, right? We're all busy, like trying to get together, then I only see them 100 more days in my lifetime. And I was thinking about my friends who live close by that we, all have kids. Kids are busy in sports and whatnot and it shows. And so we try to get together once a quarter where we like get everyone together, we do something fun. And so I figured if we're getting together once a quarter, then I didn't write down all the math. Now I'm thinking about it. I was like, oh, wait, now I have to figure it out in my head. Let's say we spend 4 times a year, let's call it 6 hours, which might be more than we would spend. So that is only one day in the entire year that we're spending together, which means we have 50 days left in my lifetime. And when you think of all the hours we spend on social media or, online or whatever, and how much time is spent with that versus these are the most important people in my life other than my family, talking about my friends. And that's it. Those are the number of days that I'm spending with them in my life. And so I try to make a concerted effort to find those relationships that mean a lot to me and figure out a way for us to see each other.
Yes, I agree so much with everything that you're saying. I know people can't see me when you're talking, but I'm just smiling and nodding the whole time because and with Zoom it has helped me so much, and FaceTime and all these new things since the pandemic happened, that I'm able to spend more time with the people that highly impact my life because of these things, you know, because I can I can make a scheduled time to meet with people, and even to have these kind of conversations with you, you know, it's connecting in a way that is unique and special, but it has deep impact on me. You know, every time I have each of these conversations, I just love it. So I'm getting so much out of this conversation. So I'm so happy you showed up. Now, what did you find was the hardest part of when you were down to really go out there and make that effort?
Again, for me, it's not that hard to go out there and make the effort. I know for a lot of people, that step is a hard step of just
Mhm.
getting out of the house and getting out there. For me, that was something that I don't mind doing. The hard thing was just being in a community where everyone really knew each other already. It was a very close knit community. And so people were really, really friendly and nice and kind, but they just weren't looking for another friend because they already had their groups of friends. And so for someone who is moving to a new city where you're in that sort of environment, for what I found to be helpful was to find the other people who were also new in town. And so that is, you get to meet people who are in your same situation, who are also looking for friendships. And one other thing that I recommend when people are moving to a new city or just being in a new environment is just going and doing something that you love. It doesn't have, without the idea that you're going to make new friends. And so changing my mindset instead of where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something I enjoy. And if I meet someone, great. If not, that's cool too, because I'm still doing something fun. And so when we moved here to Wilmette, which is in the Chicago area, I was moving back up north. Again, I'm from Florida. So I figured, all right, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to be in winter. So I just started taking ice skating lessons. It was an adult ice skating group. And it was great because I got to do something different. I met some new people. And then every year I challenged myself to do something new. And so the following year, I started taking knitting lessons. And that was a whole other experience. It was really fun. And then I started doing group guitar lessons. And so each year I would just meet different people. And for me too, it was something that like filled my soul because I was doing something new, kind of scary, like frustrating because I didn't know how to do it. And yet by the end of the year, like I knew enough that I was okay, and so you get past that frustration of being like, oh, I'm not good at this. And you meet a lot of new people and just building relationships within the community. So I do recommend thinking about how you can improve your own life and what brings you joy instead of necessarily going out there with the express purpose of meeting new people.
I So I agree with that in such a deep way, only because when I was so frustrated with not attracting healthy relationships, and I really, when I really dove into myself, I had decided to have a love affair with myself. And that's what I did. I went out and did all the things that I loved to do. And once I started doing that and was in the energy of doing the things I love to do, that's when I attracted someone who liked the same things I like to do. And I find that with friends too. Um, with what with being an author, I've met so many incredible friends through the process, through doing different Zooms, doing different, groups on Facebook and everything, and then got to actually have a more intimate relationship with these people. So it is so true that if we just put our energy into what we like to do, we're going to attract people, whether that's our focus or not. It's just because we're in the energy of following our passions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're showing that excitement and you're just in the zone, number one, you attract like-minded people that are also interested in. But like you said, I mean, you're radiating positivity versus when I was really wanted to meet friends, like I could feel desperate. I was lonely. I wanted to meet people, and you could smell that desperation. That is very obvious. Whether you're in looking for romance or looking for a friend, that's not the vibe you want to send out. But if you're there and you're like you're jamming on your guitar and having a great time, well, that just is a different sort of energy that you're putting out there.
So we're going to wrap up this part of the segment and go get ready to go Beyond the Seed, which is available on YouTube at From a Loving Place only. So everything else you could see on Facebook, you can listen to on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcasts. And I think I got them all. There might be more, Anchor. But you, we're going to take it beyond the seed, because this is a very important thing to understand, is the difference between the energy of lack and the energy of abundance. And that's the difference that we give off when we go in from that desperation versus that feeding our passions. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's dive into that, because I actually spent a whole year doing a blog on daily aligning with love, abundance, and peace over fear, lack, and separation. And that's one of the key things, is am I putting the energy of lack, the not enoughness, the
Mhm.
that desperate vibe to be attached to something but be actually separated from it? Or am I coming at it from a place of abundance and love and connection where I am not seeking from a place of lack? I'm not doing from a place of lack. I'm not trying to go out there and have somebody love me for what I do for them. The differences of that. And so I feel like people forget this when we're trying to attract relationships to our lives
Mhm.
is what energy we put out, we're going to get back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. One of the things I talk about in my book and my blog too is the energy you put out there, as you're saying, to do that into volunteering, where it doesn't just have to be, I took guitar lessons or whatever, that to go out there and how can you serve your community? What can you do to make the world around you a better place? Because A, it's good for the world. B, you are going to be happier. Like it's hard to be frowning when you are doing something good for someone else. When you are out there volunteering, you're not thinking about all these things that are happening to you. You're feeling grateful. You're grateful that you are able to be there to help, and you attract like-minded people that are also interested in the cause that you're interested in. And so I just hosted an activity fair here in Wilmette where it was over 20 nonprofit organizations, and so that people could get to know all the different nonprofits. How do you get involved? And so there are so many different, I mean, wherever you live, there are so many different types of service opportunities that you can do. And once you get there, you can find that there are other people who love, there's a place here called Go Green Wilmette. So are you really into the environment and you're helping with that here in Wilmette? Or maybe you're really interested in, there's another organization called Radical Generosity where they go and create bag lunches to give to the homeless. And so there are so many different things that you can do. And so if you enter into a space where you're volunteering, I feel like, again, what you're putting out there is positivity and kindness, and you will also receive that back.
Yes, and the compassion that
Mhm.
and that's a wonderful thing because I feel like we all need a little more compassion to give and to receive. And so when we can, the more we give it, the more we get it back too. And one of the things I've been working with my 16-year-old daughter is really trusting, though, if energies don't align, they push away from each other, and it's a natural thing to happen. But sometimes we try to force relationships to be that really aren't in our highest good to be there. And so we're actually like two magnets going against each other and doing what magnets do and resisting, and then feeling sadness and grief and everything because we're actually just resisting what's best for both people. And I feel like that's a very important part, is to allow us to be open to what relationships come in and make space for them if they feel that connection with, like magnets do, and feel that it's like, make space for it, because
Yeah.
that's special. That is a special connection when you feel that with somebody, whether it's a friend, a partner, it doesn't matter. you know I've had those friends where we met one time, had one discussion, and we knew we would be talking for years. One of my best friends, we met at the end of my driveway just because her daughter just so happened to be learning to ride a bike, and we've been friends for 15 years now. you know
Yeah.
these are the
Yeah, and you
things
have
that
to nurture
happen.
those. Yeah, you have to nurture those relationships. It's lucky that you found that person, that you felt that connection, and you've obviously done something to continue that relationship over the last 15 years. And that's such a critical part of it too, that to keep it going, that we make the effort. But also, as you were saying, if it doesn't work, one of the things about moving so often is that I have had friendships all around the country. And so I'm very fortunate that I had a lot of close friends, but also realizing at some point when that friendship has kind of run its course, and not necessarily holding on to friendships because maybe you were meant to be together for that time in your life. And at some point, it's okay to move on. And so giving yourself that freedom to say that was a wonderful relationship, and yet now, at least for me, like we're not living in the same city anymore, or maybe you just don't see the person as often, and it's okay to say goodbye, or to kind of tuck that away of like, yes, that person was important to me, but I'm going to focus on these other relationships that are here right now and that are more important to me in my life at this stage.
Yes, I remember as I think I was a teenager when I had seen something about the friendships that are meant for right now. There's the ones that are for a lifetime, and there's ones that are just for the season, and to just trust the flow of that because it's just like nature. And that always stuck with me because I, like you, moved a lot too. So it took the pressure off of trying to maintain all these relationships and feeling like I was a failure if I didn't. you know, I've had a lot of friends who have lasted, but we've gone also in and out of each other's lives at different periods, and trusting when they're in, they're supposed to be in, when they're out, they're supposed to be out, and just trusting the flow of the friendship. And you're right, it is so important to not give energy where it doesn't need to go because it just doesn't serve us that way. It weighs us down instead, which is not what friendships are about.
Right.
Do you have any other things that you learned from the book that you've adapted into your life?
I think the big thing is just looking at the big picture of time and social relation and the fitness, really making the effort. But that's something that I've always done. So it was just a good reminder. I think putting it in mathematical terms too, when you see how limited time we have, which is, sad to think about, but also encouraging because you then kind of whittle down the things that don't matter and focus on what's important. And it is the relationships. I talk a lot in my book about how to meet new people, how to make new friends, because as I mentioned, like it was something that I enjoyed doing, but I know for a lot of people that is the last thing that they want to do. Like leave their cozy, comfy house and go outside and try to meet new people can be scary. And I know what, like when we were in the stay-at-home orders, and then after that, when we were kind of reemerging into the world, I felt really socially awkward. I was like, how do we do this again? It's been so weird. Like, I don't know. What do I do? I shake hands? Do I say hi? Like, what do I do? And so I understand how, if we are kind of in our own worlds for a long period of time, and living our lives, whether it's just at work or whatever, to go back out there and put yourself in a situation where you're trying to meet new people is really hard. And so I talk a lot about that in my book, not only for adults, but for kids too, how to help kids make the adjustment. And one thing I don't think a lot of adults, parents realize is how often we're throwing our kids into situations like this. When I started taking ice skating or knitting, or like every time you walk in the room, you're like, okay, where do I sit? Who should I sit here? What should I, imagine like, for us, like going back to high school, of like walking into the cafeteria. And you can even say that, and you're like, oh, the dread of walking, like, oh, where do I take my tray? Where should I sit down? And yet we expect that of our kids every single day. Oh yeah, go try out for the soccer team, go try out for this play, go to, and we don't think twice of like all of that. It's emotionally difficult to, be doing that. And so I applaud all of our children that they are jumping into these situations, and they do it and they get through it. And I just think it's something that we should be so proud of our kids that we might take for granted. Is It's hard. It's hard to be in these situations.
Oh, that's such a good point. Do you have any more tips on really helping parents of when you're trying to parent a child and want to support that in them in a
Yeah.
positive way?
Yeah, I talk a lot about body language in my book. So giving kids the tools that they need of different body language things that they could do. And so I host a workshop every summer for the younger kids, like K through 4, of how to start at a new school. And so in my book, I call it the sneak attack. And so it's SNEAK. So S for smile. So just having your kids practicing a smile when they say hello to someone. They don't have to talk to anyone if they don't want to, but just smiling. N is for neatness. And this was especially true, I think, during the pandemic when everyone was just wearing, pajamas all the time, even on Zoom and they're in school. I'm like, you're still in school. Like, let's, maybe put on a t-shirt. But neatness. E is for eye contact. And this can be really, really tough for a lot of people. And so if you look at people, right, I don't know if people can see it, we're on video, right? Right between the eyes, like you don't have to actually look straight at people's eyes, but right here, the other person won't necessarily know you're not looking at their eyes, and it'll seem like you're making eye contact. So just showing how important eye contact is. From the younger kids, when I do the workshops, I say, okay, well, go find out what color eyes your teacher has. And at the end of the day, come home and tell me, do you know what color, eyes your teacher has? And so just having that focus, or trying to, like, if there's new people at school, say, if there's a child who's going to a new school, say, okay, can you tell me when you come home, give me one kid, what eye color they had. And then at the end of like the week, then they'll have like looked at, 5 different kids and come home and say that. Okay, so that's E for eye contact. A is arms open. And this is something that when I've done the workshops, a lot of the adults are standing in the back with their arms crossed. And as soon as I say it, they all like put their arms to the side. So arms open is really important, to have your heart facing the other person's heart. That shows that you're open to making friendships. When you have your arms crossed, it's a defensive posture. And so I'm always cold. And so like I would have my arms crossed, but I'm very adamant about keeping my hands down. You can have your hands in your pocket. That's totally fine. But just having this type of body language that shows people that you're open to making new friendships. And the last one is K, is for kindness. So just, simple pleases, thank yous, and things like that. So that's kind of a quick, sneak attack of what to tell parents and adults. Like this is for adults as well, things you can do with body language. One thing I do ask of parents is never to ask your kids, if they're starting in a new school, did you make a new friend today? Because that is putting a lot of pressure on a one day. You don't make a friend in a day. None of us do. We do not make friends in a day. So you can just say, did you meet someone nice today? Did you meet someone funny? Did you meet someone who made you smile? And kind of starting off on those little things instead of putting so much pressure on like, you need to make a friend today or this week. And just having them appreciate the little things, a smile from someone, or someone, they asked for help on homework or whatever it is, an interaction. But that is one thing that I request of parents, to not put too much pressure on their kids.
Absolutely love that tip. And it's such a great point because it's something that can be a kind of autopilot question. And you don't think about that pressure that puts on. And you're right. It's not possible that one day, you might have met someone really great and interesting, but you don't know if they're going to be a friend yet. Because, and then if something goes bad that next day, then they feel like they failed
Yeah.
if that kid went and played with somebody else and didn't give them any attention or something. So I can totally see where that makes complete sense, why it's not as healthy of a question for the child's mentality.
Yeah, because the kid will want to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
You'll ask them, did you make a new friend? And they'll say yes, because they want to please you. And so instead, try to get a story out of it, of like, was there someone funny today? And then learn more about what happened in the day.
Oh, I love that. I love that advice. So, if there was one thing that you have learned from your experience doing this that you would want to share with people to really take them away from that seeking attitude, like to transform them from the seeking to the creating the space for type presence, how would you navigate that?
Yeah, I
I
would
don't even
say
know
it's
if that
what.
question made
Yeah,
sense.
no, I get
Sorry.
it. I totally, yes. Well, I think it's just what you said earlier, Rachel, in terms of finding your passion or something that you enjoy, to do something for you that brings you joy and happiness, and you will attract others based on your own personal. You need to be in a good place before you are out there attracting other people. Also, gratitude, I just think is so important. And so I have a gratitude journal where I write 3 things every day of reasons that I'm grateful. And it can be something little. But when you are coming from a place of abundance, of gratitude, of just being thankful for what you already have, it makes all the difference. And so again, with the happiness research, it all showed number one was the social relationships. Number two was gratitude, that you have to be thankful for what you have in order to be happy, instead of always thinking, oh, I don't have this. I want more. I want more. Be grateful for what you have.
And I would challenge people, if try it for 30 days. It is amazing what happens in 30 days of focusing on gratitude, and then try to extend it from there and keep it going. But I have seen, because that's one of the things I do. I have a boot camp, and it's one of the things I do in my boot camp is you have to list your gratitude for the day. And I can't even begin to tell you the crazy things that have happened to people by switching that energy over, because the more we spot like times we're focusing on it, the more we spot out in the world. We're like, oh, okay, that's something to be grateful for. And one of the things I'm working on with my teen is, what's something that made you happy today? What's an experience that made you happy today? Because when we're in a challenging place, we can awfulize everything. And it can become everything is this, everything is that. And we don't see our moments, because we're not going to be happy every second of the day. And it's just about, when we bring focus to it, we expand it, because then we start looking
Absolutely.
for it.
Yeah.
Just like
That's,
we start looking for misery if that's where our focus is.
yeah. I absolutely agree with everything. Whatever you focus on expands, and it's so true. One of the things we did at one point with my kids is we had a gratitude jar, and so the kids would just write down on little scraps of paper something they were thankful for, and then at the end of the week, we would go through them all, and it was just so fun. It was such a nice way to go through it, and sometimes they were silly, right? Which makes it even more fun, of like whatever this thing is. And so we'd all be laughing, and to kind of either end or start your week that way is really nice to see, as a family, look at how much we have to be grateful for.
It's so, I knew I loved you. I had the same thing. And I like made a sun on it. Yeah, I have this big gratitude jar I used to do with my kids when they were little. And it was so fun. And my daughter and I just talked about bringing it back just like yesterday.
It's a nice thing to bring in and out, right? I feel like just to bring it in, do it for a little while, and it reminds you of all the things that we are so lucky to have and to be thankful for.
Yeah, and it is challenging. When teens are going through all the things that they're going through, to focus on that, it's great to bring them back. I lived with my aunt and uncle in high school for a little bit, and every night at dinner we would talk about our high points of our day. I mean, so it really helped me go, okay, what was mine, and think about it. And I'm like, oh, I could talk about this, I could talk about that. And it is that, whatever way it needs to be done, that family bond of focusing the energy around that stuff. Oh, this is inspiring me to bring back some old stuff. Even though it's hard to get two working teens to dinner, I can do this. I can
Well,
just,
even that's why I like the scraps of paper, because it
yep,
could be at any time, where they could just
exactly.
just write it at some point during the day, and then at the end of the week on a Sunday night, we'll all go through them, and yeah, that way you can get everything in.
I have loved this conversation so, so much. I'm so grateful for you to be here. And if there's one thing you want to leave, what is it?
I would say just focus on your relationships, your friendships, show your kindness, tell people how much you love them, make that effort, and that's everything. In the end, that's what we have, right? It's the people around us. So that's what I would like to leave with.
Thank you again. And for anybody who is here watching, trust that if you're here, it's because you're meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to follow the links that accompany this episode. You will learn a lot more about today's guest and see what they have going on now. You will also get all the links to follow them on their journeys if this seed resonates with you. Come back next week for another Seed of Wisdom. If you loved what you saw or listened to, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.